Well, welcome to all the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, British Columbia. And it's August, so time for a new theme. And last month's theme, of course, was on spirituality. And this month's theme is on spirituality. Sorry, but as I told you last month, Dr. Ken Hart, who's a research psychologist out of Ontario, and I have been asked to write this chapter, and it's still not written, so we're going to have another month on spirituality. Which is okay because, as I mentioned last month, spirituality in just about every study is related to good recovery. I think I read 1,353 scholarly articles on spirituality and addiction, and every one of them says somehow this thing called spirituality is related to good recovery. Anyway, I thought we'd be a little more concrete this month. And what I'm going to do is look at each week we'll have a new one. And we're going to look at 4 different ideas on spirituality that are a little more down to earth and concrete. And one of the things that I've been finding out from doing all this reading is a lot of people equate spirituality with living a meaningful and purposeful life. So the general idea is this. If you believe that there's some force in the universe that's sort of providing some order to it, and you can tap into this force, then you have an idea that maybe your life is meaningful. Maybe there is some reason that we're here. Even if I personally may not know what it is, because I believe in this force, then this force is the thing that gives order to the universe. And this provides me, depending on what you believe your spirituality is, some people think it's love, some people think it's nature, some people think it's, the Christian God, some people think it's Buddhism, whatever, it doesn't really matter what it is, but whatever this force is that you personally believe in, this provides some meaning and purpose to your life. And one of the things, so just to start off with, one of the interesting things that Dr. Hart has discovered, he just published a paper this year in one of those dull, boring scholarly journals, but it was a study done to see if Victor Frankl's idea that finding meaning in suffering was actually accurate. Frankl, for all the alumni who've been here, you know that we talk about this fellow quite a bit. And Frankl always maintained that the actual driving force in human nature was this desire to find meaning and purpose in life. So if you had Freud or some of the other psychologists, they might say it's, no, people want to find pleasure. Other psychologists say, well, no, they really want to find power. Well, Frankl pops along and says, no, what people are really after is to be able to make sense of their life and feel that their lives are meaningful. And if they can't do that, then they're going to suffer quite horribly in life. Okay, so part of Frankl's theory was that people had to find meaning in suffering. Okay, and to be honest, Frankl never invented that idea. I think he borrowed it from people like Friedrich Nietzsche and stuff. But the point of the exercise is to be happy, you actually have to be able to figure out that suffering is a meaningful experience to be human. Okay, so at any rate, all addicts have suffered, right? This whole concept of hitting bottom and this misery attached to addictive drug use. So there's a lot of suffering going on for all of us, okay? So Ken Hart went out to discover if people could look back at their suffering and make sense of it in some kind of way that would help them, then they should, in theory, get good recovery. So he did this big study and found out, lo and behold, that if people could look back at their addictive drug use, with all the guilt and the pain and the sadness and depression and everything, and actually be able to make sense of it, then they in fact had a better quality of life. And that turns out to be true. And this study was done with people 2 years after they completed treatment. Okay? So that was kind of interesting. And I don't know if you remember this, but about a year ago, I asked all of you how you made sense of hitting bottom. And it was really quite remarkable. And in fact, I gave some of this information at a conference last year in Toronto, that all the people who told us, well, geez, I don't even want to think about hitting bottom. I don't want to even think about my drug days. It was just horrible, and I've got a new life, and I'm just going to live it. All of the people who had that attitude were actually struggling in recovery. And all the people who found meaning in it were thriving in recovery. And I remember one of our alumni from Toronto had told me that now he could look back on hitting bottom and think maybe this was not a good or bad thing, but in fact it was a necessary step for him to be able to go on and live the life he lived. The same thing if I've mentioned a couple of times, if have you ever been to an AA meeting or an NA meeting where someone says, you know, I'm so happy I'm an alcoholic, or I'm so happy I'm an addict. And what they're actually saying is because they've been pushed into the corner and forced to make a decision. And if they hadn't had that forced upon them, they'd probably be just, you know, living this kind of boring life they've always lived. But because the issue was forced on them, this sort of woke them up to reality and said, oh, geez, I better get on with the business of living. So, and this is what Ken Hart's research in fact found out to be the case, that if people could look into their suffering and find some meaning for it, and some positive meaning, not because, oh no, you're a bad person and God is out to get you, not that kind of meaning, but a meaning that maybe here's a lesson for me to take from this, that I can rise above my suffering and go on and live a better life. And I had to go there just because I needed that just to wake me up to how beautiful life could be. Anyway, again, as always, something to think about. And we've got our online program, which you can ask you a few questions on this, and we'll be back next week with another topic.